Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Welcome everybody. Call the meeting to order. So we are missing Marnie and Walt. So we're also missing Tim and Jason. So Nick, you'll be seated for your first official seatment. So Nick, welcome. All right. John or Mary Kay, do you know any additions or changes to the agenda?
I love that.
I do
John,
not
no.
either.
Okay. All right, so let's move to the approval of PZC regular meeting minutes from February. Any additions, changes, or comments on the minutes? Okay, I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from February 9th. I'll second it. Second, Dave, all those in favor? Opposed? And abstentions? Okay, all right. You? All right, so unfinished business, we're moving on to the first order of unfinished business, which is the 2026 Plan of Conservation and Development. So we all have a copy of that Mary Kay was kind enough to print out for us. So we are at the point where we've gotten input from all of the stakeholders. I'll pass it over to John in a second, but we're in a situation where we're on schedule. We can do some reviews of that tonight, just make some general comments. John, I'll let John kind of review everything as well, where we stand. There's a couple comments that I have on it. And then we could continue to review before we could schedule a public hearing as well for the next step, which will kind of also help in getting us more suggestions. So I think the rule of thumb here is that nothing's set in stone with this right now. Part of the process, even with the public hearing especially, will be to give us additional feedback and we'll have the opportunity to make changes. So before I pass it on to John, is there anything from the commission? Anybody want to make a comment? Okay. All right, John, do you want to kind of go over this with us and let us know your thoughts, please?
Yeah. So thank you. So I put it up on the screen and we can go into individual sections if people are interested, but basically everything in here you have basically already seen at this point. This document represents the full compilation of the plan as we developed basically over the last year, give or take, in which we did some introduction and background, sort of setting the stage for what a plan is supposed to be, and where Columbia is demographically in terms of its employment, in terms of its development, in terms of its demographics and people and land. And then we go in, and again, the idea behind this plan was that it is meant to be essentially an update to the current plan, which is the 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development. We did not change anything dramatic in terms of the philosophical underpinnings, or really the structure of the plan. The major change that we made is basically the current POCD had something like 16 different topical chapters, and that they would include, conservation, open space, agricultural, and natural resources as 4 separate chapters. We tended in this version to combine a few things. So natural resources and open space were combined, and we deal with water resources, open space resources, lakes and ponds, water and wetlands and water courses all together. And similarly, we combined community, cultural, and recreational resources, which were all separate chapters in the prior plan, into basically a combined chapter. In each case, and I'm going to switch over to page 4, which is the POCD structure, which again, so that the chapters broadly follow this model, which is, we in each topical chapter, we provide an overview. So what is the chapter about? Natural resources, open space, what does that mean for Columbia? What's our current status? A topic discussion. So we talk about some of the inventory, the relevant factors. In the case of natural resources, we'll talk about the farmland, the soils, the wetlands, the watersheds, river corridors, that sort of thing. Sort of an assessment of where we are, what's our current status, and a projection of what we're going to need, at the rate of development, at the rate of conservation. This is what we project, that sort of thing. And then we add a couple of broad goal statements, to protect our water resources, to do more to restore lake quality, things like that, to preserve more more farmland, more open space. And then we go in and we identify specific strategies. And this is essentially the to-do list of the plan of conservation and development, broken down by task, broken down by whose responsibility it is. So it really, at the end of the day, at the end of each chapter, we have essentially the to-do list, the sort of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We basically provide those bites, right? It's a very big plan. It covers a lot of areas, but ideally, at the end of each chapter, we provide these tasks, the long-term and continuing policies necessary to get us from where we are today to where we want to go. And so we do that breakdown for all of the chapters, all the substantive chapters, and then at the very end, and we can go into all this stuff. There's lots of data, there's lots of maps, there's lots of goals, and then at the end we have the proposed implementation guide. And so this is basically, if you're sort of looking for, hey, what's the meat of the plan? What's the end goal here? Or what are we supposed to do? Is at the end of the document, which is basically starting around page 73, where we go through and we pull out each of those action items, each of those strategies that exist in each of the chapters, put them all in one place. We identify not only what the action item is, but who is responsible. And so for this first one, for instance, the goal is to protect natural resources. The action item is to promote businesses that complement the town's rural character, both active and passive recreation opportunities, such as bike shops, restaurants, beds and breakfasts, farm stands, and agritourism experiences. So that's the goal. The goal is protect natural resources. The strategy is to promote these businesses. Who's responsible? Economic development is the primary person, Economic Development Commission. The priority is ongoing. This is something that's going to be happening, throughout the 10-year period. And we identify what is the cost. And the cost is, relatively low, because this is just about recruitment efforts. This is about, creating a business-friendly environment. And so it's relatively low cost. On the other hand, if we want to look at, some higher cost things, increasing the town's investment in initiatives to reduce the lake's phosphorus load that are creating increased native plant growth and cyanobacteria patches in order to preserve the lake's quality. Who's the actor on that? Primarily the Board of Selectmen, because they're the ones with the money. It's a medium priority, so this is something that should ideally happen, between 2 and 5 years into the plan. We'll ramp up to that, and that is of higher cost. So each of those tasks that are laid out in each substantive chapter are then summarized and given essentially an assignment, both in terms of primary actor, time frame, and cost. So that is sort of a summary that we did, I believe, for last month's meeting. And again, the idea here is to create a broad to-do list that affects a bunch of different boards, commissions, entities, departments within the town, and it kind of gives us our own marching orders. So the process from here, and I will say that this is the draft. This is not the final plan. This is the draft. And the process from here, and let me stop my share. I can bring it up again if people have specific comments. But ideally, the process from here is if the commission believes that this is basically in its complete form, there are still obviously some minor edits to be done. Maybe we want to swap out pictures. Maybe we want to change some wording. Maybe we need to add a goal. Maybe we need to change some demographic number that was inconsistent or stated incorrectly. That's these are things that can be still caught. But the idea is if the commission believes that this is in its substantially complete and final form, we need to schedule a public hearing. So there in the statutes that govern the creation and adoption of plans of conservation and development, there really is no specific way to do this, way to review and adopt the plan. That's up to every town individually. The only requirement is that before the Planning and Zoning Commission adopts, and it's your responsibility to adopt, it's not the Board of Selectmen, it's not town meeting, it's not referendum, it is this commission. But before you vote to adopt, you have to have a public hearing. And unlike normal public hearings in which you just need to give um, at least 14 days notice in the newspaper, this public hearing requires 65 days notice. And in that 65 days, we need to notify the first selectman and give them I'm sorry, not the first selectman, the board of selectmen, give them an opportunity to comment. We have to notify the region, which is COG, Council of Governments, Capital Region Council of Governments, give them an opportunity to comment, and place a hard copy in the town clerk's office and in the land use office for the public to review and put it on the town website. All of those things must be done 65 days ahead of the opening of the public hearing. At the public hearing itself, we'll do a more in-depth presentation because ideally it'll be a bigger crowd. And we'll go through the whole purpose of the plan, the whole process that you as the Planning and Zoning Commission went through to get the input and to do the demographic research and to assemble our goals. We'll go through all of that and open it to the public for comment. And at that point, people could have several hundred things. Oh my goodness, I don't like this word choice here, or we need to add another goal, or we need to flag this property for growth or development or conservation. The public has their say. And you could, make all the changes that the public suggests. You could make some of them. You could say, nope, we're good. Thank you for your input, but we're happy with the plan the way it is. And then you go through your adoption process. So scrolling back to the beginning, if again, you believe that the plan is basically ready to be presented to the public and be preliminarily considered for adoption by this Planning and Zoning Commission, I think the move would be, let's formally receive the plan and schedule it for a public hearing at least 65 days hence. Again, this is not carved in stone. And if there are things that we've missed, or if there are things that we still need to correct that you would like to mention today, by all means, let's mention it today. Otherwise, I would recommend that we go ahead and schedule this for a public hearing, mid-May or later. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll make a couple comments and I'll open it up to everybody else. So I think, first of all, my view of it is that I think that it is at that point where we could, formally receive it and schedule the public hearing. I mean, I think it's a really good document that we've all been involved in from the beginning. There's been every stakeholder that's had time to comment on it. In reviewing it, I think there's a few things that will probably change between now and then. I caught a couple little things that we don't necessarily need to hash out now, but I think will come to fruition through the public hearing process. And I think a lot of the reason, at least in my opinion, to schedule it would be in order to make sure that we get that on the calendar so the public can have those comments. As a side note, John has written up an article for the Views as well to help promote that process, that general process, which I think is a great idea as well. So I think the theme here is that we've got a document that's pretty close. I would imagine for sure it'll change a little bit from now to the final version, but that's my view. So does anybody else have any comments or anything?
Sure. So I think it's a fantastic document. You can really see a lot of hard work that went into putting this together, revising it. Any comments I would have will probably be minor, even after having read it a couple times over. I agree that the sooner we start the process for moving toward the public hearing, the better. So I'm all for getting that started tonight. I had two questions. One was the survey that was put together last year that lots of folks filled out that probably informed some of the contents of this. Are we able to see the results of that survey at some point and kind of review the data that came out of that survey? Just be interested in the direct responses people had, the priorities, because I like how the survey was put together with organizing individual priorities. So it would be interesting to see that data directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think we didn't I think we noted the survey, and I think we in a couple of the substantive sections we cited some survey responses. But yeah, I think that's a very good idea. And it at the commission's discretion, we could throw in sort of an executive summary of the survey or some of the raw data as an appendix to the plan. But yeah, we'd be happy to share the and again, Nick, what you're proposing is just that the commission wants to see sort of the latest and greatest results. That's something we can send separately, but yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Great. My only other comment was, I thought we'd been working on weeding these out, but I see a number of references to rural character still throughout this document. I thought we had decided that was kind of a no-no phrase in our official policy documents.
We could. I mean, again, and this is an editorial choice that the commission can decide on. I do think there was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction amongst the planning and zoning public in Connecticut that once back, I think probably 5 years ago now, 2129, Public Act 2129, eliminated the use of community character as a criteria for essentially, deciding upon zoning applications, because it was perceived as a little bit too squishy. The plan of conservation and development has no similar requirement to sort of purge the word character from our dictionary, but and it's sort of hard to describe the community spirit and flavor and ambiance and history and heritage without using the word character. But yeah, I that's an editorial choice we could talk about.
Good.
Just a thought on that. What to the point that you made, John, about it being neighborhood character, for example, not something we want to focus on for zoning applications, but I think it fits well in this document describing, unless you can come up with a better way of expressing it, but we do have an RA zone, not a residential zone, so.
We would just be coming up with synonyms for the same thing.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, and I just want to say John, nice job.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, a lot of credit goes to my staff at Tyche as well. They did a lot of the writing on this. But you guys are the guiding, the guiding lights behind this. You identified the direction, you identified the major goals. So this is a credit to all you guys.
Yeah, appreciate it, John. It's really good. Dave or Bob?
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Bob, you're muted.
Sorry, Justin, we should try to schedule a session where we could go through this with any questions or comments so that it can be updated before it gets to the public, obviously.
John, so if we're 60 or 65 days out, we're looking at May. I'm assuming that if we wanted to formally go through from what Bob just suggested, we can do that between now and then, or would it have to be finalized and presented?
Yeah, it depends on how you were going to structure it. Like if you were going to be making a bunch of substantive changes, then I would say that this is probably not your draft, right? It's if you're going to be changing a bunch of stuff. But if I don't know, if the goal was to have sort of a working group to assemble some minor typographical stuff that could be then incorporated as part of almost like approve as amended, you would make a list of, all right, we need to change happy to glad on page 12, and we need to change character to ambiance on page 42. That could be sort of just a list of proposed amendments that would then be presented at the public hearing. That's certainly fine, but I wouldn't want to sort of do a bait and switch and present to the public and the selectmen and the COG and stuff saying, here's our draft, and then get together in a month and change 75% of it.
The issues I had, John, were more graphic design issues.
Oh, yeah.
Well, for example, what's the size of the final report going to be? 8.5 by 11?
Probably. I mean, ultimately, these things are primarily going to live as PDFs.
But there will be a hard copy somewhere.
Yes. And I'm envisioning it's laid out as an 8.5 by 11 landscape oriented document.
And type font, general type font size.
Probably 12. I would have to actually see how we laid it out.
Okay, because
Um,
some of the graphics are very, very small. And
okay.
even if I zoom in with my computer, I can't read them. So,
Okay.
they're cut and paste graphics.
Yeah,
When that happens, they get a little fuzzy sometimes.
sure.
So if we're relying on the graphics, then we need to make them clearer. And I've identified about 6 or 7 pages right now, just looking through, that I'm having a hard time reading.
Uh-huh.
If we don't need them, then take them out. But if we're putting them in, then they should be legible.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah.
And yeah, and to a certain extent, if what you're referring to is primarily, readability, layout, that sort of
Right.
thing,
Right.
that stuff we could actually do even after we adopt.
Right.
Because again, the substance of the plan, the stuff that we're truly adopting is, the words, the goals.
Right. Oh no,
yeah.
I think it's great. I think the context is great. It's just
Right.
Okay. Some of the graphics and some of the sizes
Sure.
of things, format, that type of thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I
think,
think go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
excuse me. Also, I think looking at the last one, I think there was a page of the list of participants, list of authors.
In the current plan, the 2016 plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is any kind of public document. It's always good to put the first selectman in. The whole list.
Sure, like it's sort of an acknowledgements. Yeah.
The list of the usual suspects.
Sure. Okay. Sure.
Anything else,
I think
that's good. Thanks.
Good call.
Okay. I'll just interject really quick. So the way I see this going is beyond any formatting issues or anything like that, which I think are valid. But I agree with John. We can, as long as the substance is close. Because I'll give you a couple examples. I think there's some things in here that, one was the last section that we looked at around transportation utilities and community facilities. There's some comments in there about town facilities are too small or not big enough or something. And I think we had some discussion about making sure that if that's in there, that it's more quantified and based on data. So that's a fairly minor thing. I think the theme of the whole section is there, and there's probably some tweaks that we'll make along the way. And getting the public feedback will probably help us get to that end goal. So I don't see the substance changing a whole lot, just maybe some minor stuff. But that's just fine.
Justin, could you cite where we are there for that one? What section is that? Is that in? That was in as part of the community facility.
Chapter 8.
Sorry?
Chapter 8.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Chapter 7, chapter 8, community facilities, yeah.
Just by the way, John, you'll notice that they're going through their hard copies to find the section.
Yeah. I'm scrolling.
No, they are going through hard copies.
Yeah. Community facilities.
Sorry,
Public Works. Yeah, it was in the Public Works section. Yeah. The size of the garage building is not sufficient for
the
town
garage
needs.
building is not sufficient for the town needs.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And we had that conversation. I did have that conversation directly with Mark Walter after our last meeting, and he thought the wording was proper. And actually, we're going after some grants and funding to expand facilities at that location.
Okay. All right. So it's just an example of something. The other thing from a broader perspective too, just so that it's kind of on top of mind. So this is a double-edged sword. This is a great document. There's a lot in here. There's a ton in here. And we all who've been in here long enough have seen, whether it's an application or anything that comes in front of the commission, a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, it's either in the plan of conservation and development, or it's not in the plan of conservation and development, or for lack of a better term, sometimes it gets weaponized a little bit, because I think a lot of times people don't understand the purpose of the plan of conservation and development. So, one of the things that would probably be helpful too is a disclaimer or there's the purpose of it that is in here. but maybe to be more explicit as to what its actual purpose is, that it's a document that is really meant to help with the direction of the town and the plan of the town. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there, so that's my only other comment. Anybody else have anything to discuss on it?
No, I just remember force, I think we're ready to set the public
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with the state of the document at this point.
Okay, I agree. All right, so John, would we be looking at, did you have a date in mind for the public hearing? We're gonna meet May 11th and the 26th.
Yeah. Right. So because we're meeting the Tuesday after Memorial Day in May would be the fourth, the second PZC meeting in May. So that would be tentatively the 26th.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to formally receive the plan and schedule the public hearing for Tuesday, May 26th.
Second that.
Rick seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so we'll get that scheduled. All right, moving on. New business. So John reached out to a couple of us about an appointment from a representative to the Regional Planning Commission. So the Capital Region Council on Governments. So essentially, this would be a position that we would probably just formally nominate, put somebody in from this commission who would work with PROG on, you know, fostering the regional cooperation, manage regional projects, attend monthly meetings, kind of be the representative from town of Columbia Planning and Zoning to that body. John, is there anything else that you would add to that?
No, just so it's again, so this you would represent Columbia on the Regional Planning Commission, the RPC, which is a regional body that talks about intermunicipal issues. The primary purpose for its discussion is often to discuss development proposals or rezoning proposals that would affect town line areas. So for instance, if Andover were all of a sudden to, zone all of its industrial land, right on the Columbia line, and there's a potential for, bad stormwater or other kind of runoff. On the basis of that, the Regional Planning Commission would take that up and discuss it and issue some comments to the proposing town, to Andover, on in that situation. In addition, it's possible, I don't know this for a fact, because this body is intended to have representation from all of the 36 something towns in the greater Hartford area, that because there's a new mandate from the state to look at regional housing, it's possible that this Regional Planning Commission will convene discussions on regional housing needs and allocations. I don't know that for a fact because they could assign that to a different body, but this is precisely that kind of organization that is meant to foster intermunicipal dialogue on land use issues. It's generally a meeting a month. I think primarily by Zoom. It's a fairly low commitment kind of thing. And the goal is to basically be an information conduit back and forth between the town and the region, and just make sure that Columbia is represented on these regional conversations.
I think Tom Courier did this in years past. So, John, do you know? Are the meetings all live or are they virtual? Do you know? I didn't think to ask.
Yeah, no, I believe they're mostly virtual. They used to happen at West Hartford Town Hall. I don't know that they still meet in person or if it's strictly virtual, but I do know virtual is always available for the meetings. And it's an evening meeting. It's usually a 7:00 meeting. Used to be Thursdays. I'd have to check their calendar what it is, but it's basically a monthly meeting.
I think their website says regular meetings of the Regional Planning Commission are typically held on the third Thursday of every other month at
Oh.
7 p.m. via Zoom.
All right. Excellent. Anyone interested? Any comments from the commission? Nancy?
Yeah,
Nancy, yeah,
I'm interested. Wait a minute.
I can hear you.
Oh. Nope.
Oh, yeah.
You just muted yourself right after you said you're interested. Nancy, can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll volunteer for it.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Nope.
No? Okay, I'll nominate Nancy to be our representative for the Regional Planning Commission.
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, unanimous. All right, thanks, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Nancy, I'll put you in touch with Jacob at Krog who manages that process.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Okay, so let's move to 6.2 under new business. So the zoning amendment, or I'm sorry, the zoning regulation revisions. This is new stuff that came out of the subcommittee. So what I'll do, Rick, do you want to speak to any of this, or do you want me to go through it? Okay. So this was the last meeting we had. Rick and myself, Walt, Nancy was there, some folks from the public. It's, again, a collaborative effort. Some of this stuff came from Savannah, some of it's from some things that we've noticed as well. I'll go through the packet, so the actual packet of the red lines. So we'll just use this as a reference. So the first couple have to do with setbacks, and I'll go through each one and then just pause. And if anybody has any comments, or John, you want to expand on anything, feel free to go ahead. So there's a additional section on 7.1.6 that's being proposed. And again, right now, these are just proposals. We can discuss them, we can say we don't like them, we can, add suggestions, we can wait till another subcommittee meeting, or we can schedule a public hearing and go through with them. It just depends. I'm totally fine with anything. So this first edition, the front setback for primary residential structures may be reduced at the request of the applicant and subject to approval by the commission or its designee to a distance that is within 10% of the contextual standard of the neighborhood determined by the average front setback of other primary residential structures within 1,500 feet on either side of the property, but no closer than the closest of these structures. So in short, what that means is if we're building a new residential dwelling and the existing regulatory setbacks are not necessarily in line with the existing neighborhood, meaning it was built a long time ago and maybe the setbacks weren't as stringent back then. So the applicant comes to us to say, well, we don't want our house to look odd, or we don't want what we're building to look strange. We want it to be within 10% of the contextual standard of the existing neighborhood. Then we would have the option to allow that change for them in that case.
They would have to put a case by case basis, they have to go in front of us.
Yeah, it would be a case by case basis, and just to make it not stick out or stand it. So I'll pause there. John, if you have anything to add, or if anyone else has any comments on that particular one, you can do that now.
Yeah, no, it's basically just a reflection that not all parts of town were built at exactly the same time, and our zoning setbacks sometimes don't reflect what's actually on the ground. And so, in order for neighborhoods to kind of fit together, this is a regulatory addition that kind of gets around property owners having to go to ZBA unnecessarily, to just make their property fit. Without this, you'd have to go to ZBA to have a reduced setback, and this just, bypasses that.
Okay. Any comments on that particular one? All right, move on to the next page. So under 7.7 height, area, yard requirements. So this is one that actually several people have brought to our attention, me personally, at least twice. I know that other people as well. So the only change on this page is to the rear lots minimum setbacks. Instead of being 50 feet for rear lots, we're proposing a change to 25 feet. And the reason for this is, I think at the end of the day, not to oversimplify it, but a 50-foot setback for all sides on a rear lot just didn't make a whole lot of sense to us. And we ran into some issues where some of our neighbors were running into problems complying with those 50-foot setbacks. When if you look at a road frontage lot, you know, your setbacks in many cases, the three sides at least will be 25 feet. So so that's a proposal. John, feel free to expand on that if you'd like, or if anybody else from the commission would like to make any comments on that one.
I had a question about that, Justin.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is for rear lots where the minimum lot size is 150,000 square feet or more, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is basically 3.5 acres.
Yeah.
I don't know why somebody that has 3.5 acres to develop can't build a house that has 50-foot setbacks.
Could have wetlands, you could have other things, cliffs, unacceptable grades, could be lots of things.
Yeah, but if you look above in the setbacks, the front setbacks and rear setbacks for homes is 50 feet, side yards are 25. So if I have a house on a street and I have a 50-yard setback, the rear lot behind me is only going to have a 25-foot setback. Shouldn't they also have a 50-foot setback on their front and rear yards? Especially if they're abutting other residential lots.
Well, you could approach that a couple different ways. You could change the 50-foot to 25 on the on the other ones with the.
I think I think you're going the wrong way.
What if we did this? What if we left it at 25, but it can't be closer than 50 feet to the abutting property structure?
No, because then they could build on the property line.
No,
The
it
abutting structure.
well, they still have to be 25 feet away. So maybe that number shouldn't be 50 feet, maybe that number should be 100 feet.
Again, I don't understand. We've got lots, a 3.5 acre lot, which is pretty good size.
Yeah.
And if somebody can't build within 50 feet, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but the issue is that if you look at the other types of lots, you have the opportunity to have at least some. I'm open to some suggestions or changes or not changing, but my opinion would be if you have other lots that are allowed 25-foot setbacks, but on all four sides of a rear lot, you can only have 50. That it just doesn't make sense.
I think it should be consistent with the 50,000 square foot lot that has 200 foot frontage, which is 50-foot front yard, 50-foot rear yard, and 25-foot side yard. The front yard on a rear lot would be facing the street because that's their address on that street, because they're going to be abutting other properties. And why should, yes, side yards are side yards, I get it, but front yard, 25-foot front yard, that guy's going to be right in my backyard.
So would you be in favor of on the rear lots? Technically their side yard setbacks match the 25 feet? I
say let them have 25-foot setbacks on the side yards, but 50-foot on the front and rear, just like a street front yard lot.
I agree with Bob.
Yeah, I don't disagree with
good
Bob.
point.
You know, I didn't voice any objection in the subcommittee meeting, but one of the issues is many rear lots are not rectangular like most frontage lots are. So you have rear lots that it sometimes can be almost impossible to define what the front yard is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's so in an effort, and given that they're typically fairly far away from other residences, no matter what's going on, because of the scope of the lot size, we had somebody that came forward with a real problem on an older rear lot, had to do with setbacks, and we thought this was kind of a Band-Aid solution. I don't want to call it a Band-Aid. Let me back away from that term. But we thought it was a way to help make it easier going forward. Yeah, I don't disagree that when you have that much land bulk, 50-foot setbacks should be no problem. Maybe it would be easier if we could waive them by a simple appearance before the Planning and Zoning Commission. leave them at 50-foot front and rear, or wait down to 25 at the discretion of the commission, as long as we don't trigger a real expensive review process. I think that's what we're trying to avoid here, is adding expense to people that want to make changes to their land over time. And this seemed like a simple way to approach it, but as the discussion has progressed tonight, I see the logic in what you're saying, Bob, Nance.
Yeah, I think that the challenge that we run into is, Rick, is the kind of bigger piece of what you said, is that a lot of times when we approach these things, we approach it as if it's, okay, if the number is 3 or 3.5 acres, it's a 3.5 acre exactly square lot, and everything's determined very easily. And we know, especially with rear lots, that that's just not the case. And I think what we've seen in the input that we've gotten is that the 50-foot setbacks all around for a rear lot is generally problematic because of, some of the things that people have come to us with. I'm willing to kind of think about some ideas with this and maybe kick it around in the subcommittee a little bit more if we would like. I really would not like to stick with 50-foot setbacks as a rule. I think if there's a mechanism for somebody to come in and maybe get approval for something, that maybe that's something that we can talk about.
I don't see any harm in deferring going to scheduling a public hearing until we can discuss it some more.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd love to hear more about the thought patterns of everybody else on the commission.
Yeah, I mean, if we got through this and it was like unanimous, everybody loves it, we can schedule it. But I agree with you. I would much rather toss some stuff around. So, are there any other comments on that particular piece?
I just would like to add that, I mean, when I was from my experience and previous experience in real estate, see that most approved lots are regularly shaped, more times than they are irregularly shaped. And it seems like we're trying to legislate for the exceptions. So there's going to be those few, from what I'm hearing, there's going to be those few times when somebody's got a really irregularly shaped lot and they got a problem. So can't we come up with something to deal with that? Some sort of a, approval before the board or whatever, change some language that would cover those rare situations rather than to regulate the whole thing. I agree with Bob. 25 feet, you'll be right in each other's yards. And I'd like to, see some change in that. Maybe 50 is too much, but 25 is too little.
Certainly 50 for vert in the rear is good, and then give them 25 on the side yards, just like everyone else.
Right.
So it's happy medium.
Yeah, I think we have to at least have like Rick said, we have to have the opening for someone to have hardship without going to.
Without it being a special permit.
Right.
When we trigger the state mandated public hearings and the expense of that, I just cringe.
Yeah. And I think this is an opportunity. Listen, I know a lot of people don't agree with me on some of this stuff, and that's totally fine. But I think we do, as we go along with these, especially with setbacks. And if you look at the variety of lots and shapes and sizes and acreages, setbacks sometimes don't make sense. And we need to talk about some of those mechanisms in order to make them make more sense. So, if we look at, I've always been inclined to what Dave mentioned earlier with what are we trying to protect? Well, we're sitting in our house and we don't want someone building too close to our house, to our property line. So we give ourselves a 25 or 50-foot buffer. Well, that's okay some of the times. Some of the times it's not, because really we should be looking at setbacks probably from a dwelling instead of the actual property line, which in many, many cases can be arbitrary. So that's obviously a broader discussion to have, but I think I'd be more inclined to, take this back to the subcommittee and discuss it further. So, all right. Next one, again, I'm going just through the packet. So 8.14. So there's a proposal to strike this completely out. So let me just read it just so that everybody's on the same page. Accessory structures shall not be located on any lot unless the zoning enforcement officer, after receipt and review of an application for zoning compliance and any additional documentation or information that she shall deem necessary, has determined that the accessory structure will not create a negative impact on the neighborhood character in such a way as to present an unsightly appearance when viewed from adjacent roads or properties. For example, it is preferable that accessory structures be kept in the rear or side yard and screened by landscaping or fencing in a manner which is in harmony with the principal structures and the neighborhood. This came from discussion with Savannah. The proposal with this is to strike out that section because the concern is that this turns the zoning enforcement officer into the aesthetics police. That they're having to use their own discernment and opinion and judgment to figure out whether something is in harmony, looks nice, is, doesn't have an unsettling appearance. And again, that's a subjective standard versus an objective standard. So the request would be to strike that completely out.
My only concern is if you do, and I'm not saying that I don't want to strike out, but there's a few things in there. What if you have a neighborhood and people start putting accessory dwellings in the front yard?
Well, the idea from a regulatory perspective is some of that, like the heavy list of that on where things can be, is already regulated. This would be more of, does it appear in harmony, or is it nice looking, or, what are the aesthetics of it?
Dave, I think that the concept there is if the zoning agent were to rule that you couldn't put that accessory structure in the front yard based on a subjective perspective, we're just asking for lawsuits.
Yeah.
And so I
Well,
was.
can we base it on some other? Can we base it on some other standard then?
Well, other aspects are regulated in other areas of the zoning regulations, but the idea was this seemed at every juncture to be a problematic paragraph. It just had no place where we
But
should
it
be
makes
having
a good
protective
point,
stand.
though.
Hold on a second.
Hold on a second. Go ahead, Greg.
Just where we've been trying to create objective standards consistently through the regulations. This one just wasn't in harmony with our thought process about how we want to regulate going forward. And it's basically unenforceable because it's so subjective. So
If you go back to section 7.
Hold on a second.
If there's suggestions as to anything that might have hinted at being something that we want to pursue, let's propose that as an additional change to the regulation or an addition to the regulation elsewhere, but in a purely objective way.
Okay,
Excuse
go
me.
ahead, Bob.
Yeah, if we go back to section 7.1.5, which is about accessory buildings in a residential agricultural district, right there, that talks about side yard and rear yard setback requirements. So because it doesn't mention front yard, that means basically you cannot put it in the front yard. That's my interpretation. Correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If something is not mentioned in the zoning code, then it is not acceptable.
Yes, that's the overall theme of the zoning regulations. Yes, and that's codified within the regulations.
Is that right, John?
To be clear, that specific regulation is just about one accessory structure. One in people are basically given leniency on the setback location of one accessory structure. If you read that, one attached accessory building per lot, maybe 50% of the side or rear yard setback. So you can put one building closer to the setback. The others have to apply to all setbacks. So it's close to what you're saying. It's not entirely what you're saying.
So if we don't want something in the front yard, we should put it in this section?
Broadly speaking, yes. Setbacks, yes. If you want the trick being, not all accessory structures are the same. And we're going to talk about this in the definition of structures a little bit, but broadly speaking, you could prohibit accessory structures of most types in the front yard or forward of the house, of the primary residence, or the primary structure, I would say. But there are other things that would be considered accessory buildings or accessory structures. A pergola, a gazebo, a mailbox, a flagpole, there any number of little a bird feeder, a fountain, a sculpture that might not be inappropriate in a front yard, that you don't want to paint everything with the same brush there, is my point.
There's one other thing I'd like to bring up. I know, for example, right now, somebody's proposing an accessory dwelling unit in their front yard on a rear lot. Nobody will be able to see it. So I don't want to preclude that type of use of somebody's property.
Right. And again, that goes back to one of my points is if we were dealing with postage stamp square lots and everything was the same, we may have a point with that, but because they're not, that adds a little bit more context to the situation, so. Yeah, Nick.
They're still, this came up like a year plus ago when we were doing revisions. There is not a concrete definition of front yard anywhere in the document. Like you think of front yard, you're like, I'll know it if I see it, but there's cases of what if it's a corner lot and the house sits diagonal and it's far back? Is their front yard like 90% of their property? So I feel like there are some circumstances where, or just a straight rectangular lot where it's maybe 400 feet deep and the house is back 300 feet. So they can't do anything that 300 feet up front.
John, aren't corner lots, don't they have 2 front yards?
I believe they do. I don't have the full zoning regs in front of me, but yeah.
That's standard. I know that.
Yeah, but the point still stands. Well, I use my house as an example. I have a full acre in my front yard. It's a full acre, and it's my front yard, and I'm not the only lot like that in town. So I think because each one is a little bit different, we need to take that into consideration. So.
I'll speak as a resident. My house is the same way.
Yeah, there's a few of us. So, any other comments on this? Nancy?
Yeah, I just want to add in a comment. I was just recently in an adjacent state, I won't say which one, but riding through it and looking at all of this mixed residential, commercial, was anything goes, and the immediate reaction, if you know anything or have any concern about zoning and development, and it looked like a mess. It looked there's no planning going on here anywhere in this town, and it looks horrible, and you can't wait to get out of it. That was just my immediate reaction when you have just free for all, and that's what this area was, and it was a big area. I hate to see I hate to see us going down that kind of a road. And I'm not saying we are here with what we're just talking about specifically right now, but we need to reflect who we are and what we want to remain. You can see what can easily happen when you just let go of any kind of planning and coordination. And sure, people want a right to do what they want on their property, but within reason, we're all intertwined with each other, whether it's rural or not rural. I just like to see us keep all of that in mind. I don't think that there's anything horrible about this paragraph. It makes a good point. From a zoning and development perspective, I can understand a zoning agent's concern with it, and that certainly has to be addressed. But let's not just get rid of it altogether. Let's come up with something, and if it has to be a objective standard rather than a subjective, then let's do some more research and see what we can come up with.
You guys can just send it back to the subcommittee, and then I think we need to work on what a front yard is and what is allowable in a front yard, especially with regard to accessory dwelling units.
Okay.
You'll end up with some things that could really impact an immediate neighborhood. People would not be happy. Other people would not be happy either. I mean,
so I think we're getting from this exactly what we need to go back to the subcommittee and refine it.
Yeah. One thing I just like everybody to keep in mind as well is, so we'll go back to the subcommittee and toss that around. It's very important that if we have a general agreement that a subjective standard isn't good, because the problem with something like this is it's relying on a zoning enforcement officer to use their judgment to determine something and that's going to have some sort of result on someone else, on one of the neighbors. So if there's an objective standard, I would highly encourage everyone to come to the subcommittee with that. I think the more objective standards we can have, the better. Nick?
Yeah, it sounds like there's two things here. One, this paragraph is entirely unenforceable.
Yeah.
Needs to go, but we also need to make sure that we're not ignoring any issues that we were kind of addressing with this in the back of our head. We're like, oh, we've got P.14 that'll address that if we really need to. Which
Right.
fix all the problems.
Yeah, I agree with you. And perhaps in other areas of the regulations, these things are addressed and we just need to determine that, so. Okay, so let's move on. Section 9, definitions of structure. So there was, you can see some red text there. Retaining wall, this is everything that, let me just read the paragraph. Retaining walls, public utility equipment as defined herein, handicap accessibility ramps or residential heating, air conditioning, condenser units, propane tanks, generators no more than 10 feet away from the principal building, and then this is what's new, residential playscapes, flagpoles, mailboxes, and similar accessory appurtenances, meaning current building and fire code, are not considered structures under these regulations. So where this comes from is someone wanted to put up a residential playscape for their children. There was, I think in this case, a particular example, there was a dispute between the neighbors. And then because of how open-ended the definition of a structure is, there was a question on whether the playscape needed basically a swing set needed a zoning permit. So what we would like to do is add a few more exceptions or exemptions from what is a structure needing a zoning permit to include residential playscapes, flagpoles, mailboxes, and similar accessory appurtenances. So, is there any comments or Nick? Yeah.
Does similar accessory appurtenances leave the door open to too wide of interpretation?
Well, it leaves it open to interpretation, yes. The challenge with all of this is we're kind of, and again, my opinion, you can disagree with me. We're approaching this in kind of an opposite weird way. Generally, the way that a lot of regulations work is they'll tell you what you can't do, assuming that you can do a lot of other things. Where we've taken the opposite role, which I'm not judging, is we've said if it's not written, it's not real. If it's not written, you cannot do it. So what this does is it puts us in a situation where, because we kind of have a generally vague definition of a structure of being anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires location on the ground or attachment to something having location on the ground, that can be anything. So you can approach this a couple different ways. The way that we've chosen to approach this is to list out the things that are like, this is ridiculous, you shouldn't need a zoning permit for. That does create some challenges because that list can get longer and longer and longer. Or you could have a minimum standard for a structure and then say anything else that doesn't fall into this standard or this envelope or this footprint does not need a zoning permit. So here what we're doing is we're trying to like kind of follow the same path that we have in the past and just add those things that we know are common that really aren't structures, but in the absence of a description of them would technically require a zoning permit. And trying to leave it open enough so that there is enough reasonable discretion. Any other comments or? No?
I'm good with this.
Okay. All right. Another one everybody's good with. That's good. Let's go two. All right. Next one. This is more of there's a technical change to ensure ENSUR instead of INSURE. So that's on 71.4. The other difference is 71.4.1. The applicant shall notify by certified mail on a form provided by the Zoning Board of Appeals all adjacent owners of property within 500 feet, which is struck out, and that's changed to 200 feet of the boundaries of the applicant's parcel and set forth in the record of the assessor's office. So this is notifications to neighbors. And the reason that this came to light was because there's some inconsistencies with process and paperwork. So something was left out at some point when things were changed, and there was a discrepancy between what I think the building department had in their paperwork versus what was in the regulations. So we're just proposing to match those things and reduce it to the 200-foot notification here in the regulation, so it matches the process within the building department. This is how I understand it, unless Rick, you remember something else with.
So basically, you're notifying one or two abutting property owners on either side.
Not 35.
Yeah.
Right. There any other comments?
Yep.
Nancy?
Yeah, I have
Nancy?
a comment and a suggestion. I've thought about this since the meeting. And again, some think that 500 feet is too much. I think 200 feet is too little, and we need, particularly when you have residential and commercial zones adjacent or abutting each other, there needs to be some language included to address those particular issues. And I just can tell you from my own experience, your 500 feet is not too much when you're facing what could be a very intensive use in a commercial zone. And I think that the residential neighborhoods that abut our commercial are all pre-existent, pre-established to the commercial zones, and they deserve some consideration. And 200 feet would be inadequate to notify people of what could, be some pretty intense uses that would impact the use of their property and living in the residential zone. I'd like to see some language that would address that distinction. You might want to do that for just residential to residential, but when we have the commercial and the uses that are allowed in our commercial zones, I'd like to keep it at 500.
John, we don't know the answer to this right now. It's fine. We can kick this back to the subcommittee. But
Yeah.
we changed, so any special permit, any business that's going on a commercial zone, if it abuts a residential zone, they automatically need to be notified. But do we know if that's any different than what's written in here? 500 feet.
I'd have to check that special permit. I don't believe the notification distance is different. The difference is that ordinarily most commercial uses in the commercial district are as of right or site plan approvals. But if you abut a residential zone, it's automatically a public hearing. It's automatically a special permit. And so, people are notified, and a sign is posted on the property and a notice goes in the paper and all of that. So there is deference given to residential properties abutting commercial. I'm just not sure that the number is different. I think the number is probably the same.
Yeah, and didn't we loosen up the regulations as far as the planning and zoning can approve a lot of things, just the zoning commission can just approve a lot of things on their own, or the zoning agent can just approve a lot of things on their own now?
There was a bunch of commercial stuff that was shifted to become easier to do, but the exception is if your commercial use is abutting a residential zone, then there is still the special permit standard.
So it automatically triggers a special permit, which automatically triggers a hearing?
Automatically triggers a public hearing and automatically triggers neighborhood notification, but it's just exactly what that distance is. I'd have to check the regs.
Yeah, I'd want to clarify this and make it a little clearer when you have the situation of commercial and residential.
Well, that part is clear in the use table in the commercial district.
Yeah, and I guess that's my concern, because that already exists. So what we're talking about now is under section 71 is for the Board of Appeals. So what we're talking about is really an administrative enforcement notice, which we can kick this back and answer these questions. But John, I mean, just knowing that, do you have any other comments on that? Because I feel like we're dealing with two separate issues here.
Right. This reg is just meant to make the ZBA and the planning and zoning notification the same.
Yeah.
That's what this is proposing to do.
But let's do this, let's take it back to the committee. Let's clarify that a little bit more before we present it next time. Cause I just wanna make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, cause I feel like there's two notifications here that we're talking about. And we've addressed that previous one, but let's look at it again. So, okay, that was I'm sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure that residential zones, people in residential zones get fair notice of things that are going to impact them. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
You know, and then the process can take place from there. But you know, if it's going to be 200 feet, a lot of things could go on, and people don't find out until you know it's there and it's done and it's too late. That can happen. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All right, so we'll just bring those back. We've got a couple that everybody was good with, but let's bring those others back to the subcommittee. We'll talk a little bit more about those. Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
So the next item of business is the Town of Columbia Planning and Zoning bylaws. So John marked up in your packet, you have a red line bylaws. So this is the Columbia Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws that govern how we do business. I'll go through these quickly. Let's just kind of go to the end first, just to kind of explain what we can do. And I'm totally fine either way. This is nothing that we have to rush. But basically, according to the bylaws, they can be amended by a 2/3 vote of the entire voting membership of the commission only after the proposed changes have been read and discussed at a previous regular meeting, except the bylaws may be changed at a meeting by the unanimous vote of the entire voting membership of the commission. So we would probably be better off to review these and then go the next meeting. We have the opportunity to actually vote on them, so everybody has some time to think. At the end of this, if you go through them and you're like, no, everything's perfect and it's unanimous, we could change them tonight. So we could just kind of play it by ear. All right, so and I have a couple that are suggestions in here that are not redlined as well. But let's go to the red line first. We'll look through that because it'll be a little easier to follow. So on page 3 is where we start with this. So Article 7 meetings, Section 1. Basically, what we're suggesting is regular meetings will ordinarily be held on the second, fourth Monday, blah, 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 7 p.m. Or at the time and locations agreed upon by the majority of the commission is the new language. What we're striking out or proposing to strike out is the intent of that the first meeting of the month will be dedicated to zoning permits and public hearings, and that the second meeting of the month will be principally dedicated to subcommittees and discussing potential changes in zoning and subdivision regulations. I think we just felt generally that it was a little too micromanaging, and that, you know, the new wording leaves a little bit more open to how we normally conduct meetings. So that's the first one. Any comments? Yeah, Nick.
Is there a reason to leave the open-endedness of the scheduling? Because these meetings are scheduled for a year out.
Mhm.
Is there a reason we would potentially want to leave that open to change?
Well, what if there's some disaster or something comes up, or a storm or whatever, and we need to make a change?
Well, in order to change a meeting, we would have to do a special meeting. We can't just move an existing meeting to a different date. We can cancel an existing meeting and we can create a special meeting that covers specific topics, but we can't just say, okay, we're moving in the middle of March, we're moving from Mondays to Tuesdays now. Because the meeting schedule's
I think the thought pattern was we don't need to prescribe this in laws. We can use it as a scheduling convention, conceptually, but to codify it in our bylaws was just, there's no need for it.
Yeah, and another way to think about it too is Robert's rules will, you know, always be a part of this. So if there's a process that we follow per Robert's rule, that will also be in play here too. So
we can still stick to that convention, and I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But we don't, to have it as part of our rules would limit our flexibility going forward, as opposed to just as it is, we've been changing things around from time to time in the past.
Do other commissions have similar language in their meeting scheduling bylaws?
They mostly meet once a month.
Yeah, Board of Selectmen will meet every couple of weeks. I can't answer that specific question, we can look into it. Any other comments on that one? Okay. So Nick, what would you, so here's my stance, I like what we've done here, but do you have any specific suggestions with that section?
No, I'm just thinking about how it plays out, like, because we set the year's calendar in the previous, I think, November, and then we put that out. So we might say it's November, we wanna suddenly meet on Thursdays now instead of Mondays.
I'll give you a practical example. Let's say next month, the women are in the final game. That's on our night. Couldn't we agree that we're gonna meet the next night?
No,
Yeah, we have certain protocols that we have to follow, but
Well, you could say, you could cancel the meeting and schedule a special meeting with at least 24 hours notice.
Oh, yeah, I can't just schedule a special meeting, okay.
so, okay, well, let's do this because I don't anticipate us voting on these tonight, so this isn't something vital that we get done right now. So part of this process is to bring questions like that to light and then work through them, so.
Justin, I have a question.
Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah.
You're talking about agreed by a majority, and this is consistent with some of the other changes that are going to be coming up, changing 2/3 to majority. I think there's a philosophical reason for having 2/3 vote necessary for all these various actions. One of which is there's always going to be a majority party that is in planning and zoning, whether it's Democrat or Republican. That's just the way it's set up. And if it's by majority, then one party could theoretically run the whole thing. If it's 2/3, then you've got to have at least some of the minority party involved in the decision-making process.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. I guess the next question would be, so if we go to the next page, because that's where we're starting to talk about this. The notice of a regular meeting shall specify the purpose of such a meeting and no other business may be considered except by a 2/3 majority, or 2/3 vote. Now we're proposing changing that to majority vote of the commission. So do you think it's more important that 2/3 number be used in certain areas, or are there certain things in here that you think a majority would suffice that are currently 2/3?
Well, I think we should be consistent with what's there. I mean, again, the concept of 2/3 is to not have one particular majority majority party run things. I mean, that's the idea of 2/3, is there's more parity in the decision-making process.
Good point.
I mean, I'd have to review Robert's Rules of Orders, but I would suggest that it's probably that way in Robert's Rules of Order also.
Okay. Any other comments around that? We're kind of on page 4 right now, section 3. Okay, so let's just go down. So we'll make a note of that. That's not a bad point. So let's think about that. All right, so next section, the notice of a special meeting shall specify the purpose of such a meeting and no other business may be considered. The secretary or staff shall notify all members of the commission, and we're striking out in writing and putting in via email or other form of direct notice, which this is more of just a kind of a modernization of the language as far as I think how we approach it. Not less than 24 hours in advance of such a meeting. And then we strike out, a member may waive such written notice in favor of notification of such a meeting by telephone or email. So we're kind of bringing it back into the 21st century here, at least how I'm approaching this or looking at it. Then any comments on that?
Good idea.
Okay. I'm assuming the next one will be the same comment, so I'll just read it so it's in front of everyone. All commission meetings shall be open to the public. Executive sessions may be held upon an affirmative majority vote instead of 2/3. And then obviously we have to follow the general statutes around what we're allowed to do for an executive session. Bob, would you have the same comment on that one, I'm assuming?
Yeah, all the way through. Yeah.
Any other comments on that? All right, next page, page 5. Order of business, basically, so what we're striking out is unless otherwise determined by the chairman, the order of business at regular meetings shall be, and then it goes through enumerating everything, call to order, roll call, blah, blah, blah. And what we're putting in its place, or proposing to put in its place, is the chairman shall, with the assistance of staff, establish the agenda for each meeting. Again, it's kind of, I think some of us felt it was micromanaging a little bit with agendas, but I'm totally open to what anybody says about it.
One of the comment, well, a couple of comments I had. I think the existing order of business is a good template to follow. It allows us to fill in the blanks, and we won't be forgetting anything. If we're reinventing the order of business for every meeting, there's a chance of forgetting things that we should be talking about. I mean, one of the things, for example, is audience of citizens. That should be on every single meeting. We should give the audience a chance to participate. It's here twice I don't know why it's here twice, but it's here twice, but it should be at least once. Again, it's a pretty good template. If somebody's going to develop one from scratch, they're probably going to have all these things in here anyways. I mean, from a legal standpoint, you got a call to order. You need the roll call. You seat alternates at that point. The reading of the minutes is in here, which is, I think we have to do legally, don't we have to accept those? Audience of citizen, unfinished, but I mean, all these things should be in a regular meeting anyways. So why not just have this as a template and fill in the blanks?
The reason, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think no one's disagreeing that this is a reasonable template. I think and again, this is my red line, so these are my comments. If something should change, or if the chairman decides that they want to do one audience of citizens instead of two, or they want to do new business up front instead of unfinished business, someone aggrieved could point to our bylaws and say, look, you did it wrong. And there's no legal reason that the order of business needs to contain all of these exact things in this exact order. And it really can, it's a useful template, agreed, but that doesn't mean that you need to codify it as a point in your bylaws that would then create an opportunity to trip you up in some sort of appeal process later.
Section 2, which is just below this, allows for changes to the agenda.
Yeah, but that's generally during a meeting. So if we want to move, an item lower on the agenda up higher to the agenda so that we get somebody on their way or something like that, there's that mechanism for doing that. I think that we're the positive side of redlining this and taking this out is it does give us, we know the elements that we have to include in a meeting. And if we look at our agenda, I don't want to get us in trouble, but we didn't have an audience of citizens on our agenda at the beginning of this meeting, but technically by our bylaws, we were supposed to. And why didn't we do that? Because, maybe we didn't look at the bylaws. So I think that allowed us to give ourselves, even if we were to approach it as these are the elements, or the elements by whatever rules, Robert's rules, or whatever we're referencing, I think that would be fine. But I agree with John. I think this ties us to something that, we know the elements that we need to do. We just probably should be a little bit more flexible with how we approach this through bylaws. And Nick,
Could we just change this to say that establish the agenda for each meeting, including but not limited to, and then list these as items and say in whatever order is determined appropriate by the chairman and staff. This way we have those items there to remind us this is what we should do, but there's flexibility to rearrange them if needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to say just what Nick just said. Seems like we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. And so if you don't want the rigidity of it and you want some more flexibility, just change the wording rather than to just blanket out altogether, leaves it with no protection whatsoever. So I'd like to see it stay in, but that it's at the flexibility of the chairman. As long as those items are included in each meeting, it can be at the order which they determine, rather than to just wipe it out altogether. It seems a bit of a risk.
Maybe I know that, I don't necessarily disagree. Does anybody else have any other comments?
So basically, you're just saying, these are the, in no particular order, this is the list of things we need to include.
Yeah, these would be the elements that we would have to have, including but not limited to.
Right.
I've seen this on planning and zoning commission's agenda and a few other commissions and boards here and then other towns in Connecticut, but nowhere else where you have the two audience of citizens. And I wasn't sure if that was just an accidental copy paste that happened once and perpetuated for many years, or if there was a specific driving reason for that. I can think of reasons why I
can speak to that.
Yeah, very good.
We had people that would hear things in the meeting and would want to comment on it toward the end of the meeting, based on what they heard in the meeting. And we also had people that wanted to bring up something that definitely got our attention at the beginning of the meeting. So it's really a minor thing. I think it's just public friendly. That's all.
I think so, makes sense. All right, any other comments on that one? Okay, the next one is the 2/3 to majority, so we'll just make a note on that. I'm assuming that's gonna be the same comments. Page 6, section 2, the secretary or commission clerk shall read the legal advertisement and note the dates and newspapers in which the advertisement appeared. This is when in conducting a public hearing. So it just gives the commission clerk the option to do that. Instead of it's listing the secretary right now. So we're just adding that. Are there any comments?
Just one thought there. We might want to change newspapers to media in case the state statute changes about requiring us to publish in newspapers in the future. We want to go bylaws. Because I'm hoping we don't have to put it in the newspaper at some point in the near future, and we could just simply put it on the town website.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other comments? Okay. Section 4, and again, this is conducting a public hearing. So there's quite a bit of strikeouts here. So the chairman shall, and the way it's written now, is first call for statement from the proponents of the applicant being given the first opportunity to speak. The opponents shall be given equal opportunity to comment. The order is reversible at the direct discretion of the commission prevailing. Whichever the case may be, each group shall make it its presentation in succession without allowing an intermixture of comments pro or con. The applicant shall have an opportunity to respond to questions and comments. Persons who are neither proponents nor opponents shall be given an opportunity to comment. So that proposal would change to the chairman shall conduct the public hearing in accordance with the applicable state statutes and guidance of Robert's Rules of Order.
Does Robert's Rule of Order say the same thing? As far as having the proponents go first and the opponents go second?
Does it get that specific in a public hearing? No. I don't think so, right?
Justin?
Yeah.
Usually at a public hearing, the chairman states out what the rules are for the public hearing. In other words, who speaks first, you're going to be given 5 minutes. The opposition gets to speak, you're given 5 minutes, that type of thing. So if you strike this out, that's fine, but you should also keep it as a cheat sheet for when you run a public meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather. I think that makes more sense to me. I would rather use it as a kind of a notice to the chairman to make sure that they're following the right rules.
Right.
In case those were to ever change.
Yeah, because the audience is not going to know what the state statutes are or what Robert's Rules of Order say.
Exactly.
Right. They're also not going to generally be reading the bylaws themselves.
Right. No.
Yeah.
But somebody may refer to the bylaws. You don't know. If
Right.
it's a contentious meeting.
Which is actually kind of the reason I would prefer to keep them a little bit more
Exactly.
general in their guidance rather than
Yeah.
truly prescriptive, because you get hung up unnecessarily.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the idea, because you risk, okay, well, we didn't follow point by point in section 4 of the bylaws exactly, but we could still be compliant with the law and what we have to do.
Right.
So I think that should supersede. So.
John, excuse me, are there state statutes for public hearings?
Yes, but not the internal conduct of them. Really, more about the notification of them and the timeframes.
Should we strike this then? Because there are no applicable state statutes for public hearings.
Well, there are state statutes about timeframes of public hearings, and the meeting at which it's opened and that sort of thing.
Okay. So you want to leave that in?
I do because I wrote
Okay.
it, but
Okay. That's good.
Right. The only other thing that I just wanted to bring up, that I kind of thought of last minute. So going back to page 2, officers and their duties. The section 1, it says the officers of the commission shall consist of a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. One of the things that we had a challenge with this last go around when we didn't have a vice chair candidate in the beginning. So I went to town, our council, and just said, well, can an alternate be vice chair? Can an alternate hold an officer's position? And the answer was, well, there's no law against it, but it can be problematic. So I think it's probably best practice, although it's not illegal, it's best practice to make sure that we're choosing them from the 7 full members. So I did have a note just to add that to section 1, chosen from the 7 full members or something similar. So that was one of my edits to it. Is there any comments or concerns around that?
Nope.
Okay. And then, section 5 and 6, I just want the commission's input on this. So obviously we have a secretary. The secretary, with the assistance of such staff as is available, shall keep the minutes and records of the commission, shall provide notice of all meetings to commission members, arrange proper and legal notice of hearings, attend to the correspondence of the commission, and such other duties that are normally carried out by a secretary. The secretary shall act as the parliamentarian for the commission. I know since I've been around, this is one where I just rather have input. I'll tell you my opinion on some ways that we could go with this, but we could forego having a secretary because I know that a lot of this has been done by Mary Kay and those who came before Mary Kay. I think secretary hasn't had a whole lot of these responsibilities in the past, and I might be wrong. We could strike it out, or you guys could tell me, no, we need a secretary that needs to stay. But that was another thing that kind of stood out to me, so I'm just opening up for
I
conversation.
think we need a secretary because in a few cases where we didn't have chair or vice chair available, secretary had the legal power to run a meeting. And so that would keep a meeting from not occurring.
Right.
And striking the duties of the secretary, except for the last sentence of the part, I think that's effective to have the secretary as a parliamentarian. But I don't know the specific duties need to be delineated in the bylaws.
Okay, yeah, that was one thing that came to mind too, as far as succession. So if the chair and vice chair are unavailable, but there's still a quorum, for the secretary be next in line. I don't know if that needs to, it's not really enumerated in here. But I mean, that could be something that we consider too. Does anybody have any other comments on that?
The other thing, I think further down, doesn't the secretary read the legal notices?
Have we done that though? I don't. I mean, and again, this is where it may say to the bylaws, but I don't know that we've followed that.
Right, I think it's somewhere in there. Somewhere it said that.
No, it says it. Yeah, for sure.
So if you're going to strike that, you got to strike the other one too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anything that would refer to a duty of the secretary further in the bylaws.
Right.
That we would take out in this, we would definitely stop the strikes.
I think you have to look at Robert's Rules of Order to see if the secretary actually runs the meeting, if the chairman and vice chairman are not there. I think that's the right order, but so that would be a good reason to keep the secretary position and also to act as the parliamentarian.
I feel like the idea of the parliamentarian, that's something that all the boards and commissions can improve on. But let's look into that a little further. Just I'm good either way. I think we could probably take out some of the specific wording in there, just make sure that if everything jives with them being chair in absence of the chairman and vice chair, and that's probably a reason to keep it, but
Just in regards, if I am out, there is no back.
yeah, it's true. Be back in for you. Okay. Any other comments? Alright. Okay, so let's we'll rework some of this, we'll bring back to the next meeting, and next opportunity. There. Alright. Regulation revisions, we've already talked about the regulation, there's nothing else on the table, so the next meeting is, what did we say it was? March 17th. Yeah, 17th at 1 p.m. So we'll bring some of this up at that point, revisit some of that. Communication reports, John, anything?
Can you stop for a second, Justin?
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't hear what you just said. The next meeting is March 17th?
Yeah,
Regulations.
for the subcommittee, the zoning regulation revision subcommittee.
You're doing it on a Tuesday instead?
Yes, at 1 p.m.
Okay. You usually do
It'll
it
be
though.
here in the
It's
meeting
usually
room.
Thursday though, right?
Last time it was Thursday because some people were unavailable.
Oh, but it's normally on Tuesdays?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. I wasn't aware of that. Okay, I thought it was the regular was Thursday. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Communication reports, John, anything?
No, just a reminder that there's a session on Wednesday evening, training session put on by my firm Tyche Paladin Policy Group and Haller and Sage, your attorneys, to discuss the new housing bill.
Yep, and if you haven't signed up for that, I would encourage you to register for it. So Mary Kay will send that again. Yeah, she'll send that out. If you open up the attachment, the registration is in the PDF. Okay, audience of citizens. Anyone like to say anything? Rhonda?
I'll just say something really quick. Rhonda Kincaid, 8 Basket Shop Road, member of code, just on a quick read through of the draft plan. We were very happy to see that quite a few of our recommendations and proposals were included in the plan, and it looks like, you know, I'll have to go back and read it through a little bit more carefully, but on a quick read through, it looks like a really very nice job done all around. So
Thank you. Thank you. A lot of good input from the public, and John did a great job putting it together.
yeah, very nice.
Yep.
Sherry Gage, 232 Route 87. I have a similar comment. I don't know where this is at this point in the development plan is exactly, but I am seeing things in here written about transportation and the fact that the town really has a lot of transportation for motor vehicles, but not other ways to move around. And we have this great town center, and it's very hard to access any other way except by car. And I think that those are really important things to look toward in the future, like whether people can get around by walking or biking or get to the Hop River Trail. And I hope that all of those things will stay in the development plan, because I think they're super important in the future going forward.
Thank you. Definitely stay tuned for the public hearing and make sure that you participate in that. So that'll be another opportunity to voice those comments. Yeah, anyone?
I just want to thank John for the really good job. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice job. John gets the cardboard cookie for this one. Did a nice job on it. So. Pat, anything from you? You're the only one. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. You can be quiet.
There you go, Pat.
Thank
You're all set, Pat.
you. Thank you. I would like to say that I had the opportunity to attend the panel explaining about the new housing bill, and John was a great part of that. And you did a great job. And I asked for the slides for that. At the beginning, she said that we could she would send us the slides, and then I didn't get them and I requested them. I wonder if you have any way of getting us. I have your slides because I took pictures of them.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, Pat, what panel was this?
Oh, that's a good question.
Was it the one that the Connecticut planners put on in Cromwell?
There, I did it by Zoom and it was a couple of weeks ago. And it was you and
Oh, was this was the Open Communities Alliance?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Yeah, I can talk to Aaron Boggs and get you a copy of that.
Thank you
That
very
was,
much.
yeah, that was a slightly different spin on the, yeah, I did a presentation on
Glastonbury.
yeah, Glastonbury on fair housing plans. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair share plans.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get the copy of the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, there's no executive session. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Dave seconds. All those in favor? All right, thanks everyone, appreciate it. Good night.
All right. Thanks, Mary Kay.
Thanks, John.